Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Fintech Talks, and I'm here today with Chris Black. Chris, would you mind introducing yourself?
Thank you very much, Sanjay. Appreciate the invitation. Chris Black, CEO of Threadbank in Nashville, Tennessee.
What does Threadbank do, and how long can you give us a little background on that?
Yeah, So Threadbank, we're a community bank, Tennessee State Charter, FDIC community bank that really specializes in sponsor banking, embedded banking. A lot of people call it banking as a service. Different ways to think about it, but that's what we do at our heart. We recapitalized a small bank up in Eastern Tennessee about 5 years ago. Really a group of like-minded bank private equity, fintech venture capitalists, bank executives, technology executives, kind of the blend with the mindset and really what we've been able to execute of delivering embedded banking, threading, that's the name, to thread
Hmm.
or to embed banking products and services for partners, mostly focused in the small business vertical, part of the market.
After you've built it, what has been the market response like, and what are there particular areas that have been more interesting?
Yeah, it's been great. It's been a pretty amazing run, full of ups and downs, many more ups than downs. As banking is tough, technology is tough. Uh, Bank technology is tough, but the opportunities are extreme, very high. So we came at this, like I said, kind of a blended mindset of bankers and technologists. Interestingly, all of our technology folks, most of them have very deep expertise in banking and building uh, or running bank software companies, more infrastructure pipes, back end. So there was a high degree of really expertise and understanding of banking, even from the technology side. So all of that together, you know, has presented this pretty incredible opportunity for us to do this the right way, to do this as a bank first. But I like to say the way we've thought about it, and I think how the market looks at us is that banking is and always will be about deposits, loans, capital, liquidity. That's what a mentor of mine had a long time ago taught me. And interesting, I said, I think we're missing something. I think payments also should be on there, and that speaks to a lot of. And we get into to more of the why and what we've done, and what's behind it, the motivation. But it's on that foundation of non-negotiable characteristics and safety and soundness and risk management first. But then after that, our mentality from day one has been to challenge every paradigm in terms of how banking is thought about, how banking products and services are delivered, and really what the position of the bank needs to be in the modern digital ecosystem. And so it means we're viewed in many different ways, and accepted in different lights. In some circles, we're probably a pariah because we're a bank who says, you know, we don't have to quote own the end customer. Now, they're our customer and we're highly interested in who they are, what they're doing, and how they're transacting. But, we can either go and attempt to hire many, many teams of dedicated SMB verticalized focused bankers, or we can partner with technology firms who are really good at delivering specific and detailed and deep value to those same customers with non-banking products. And then we bring the banking, the compliance, the infrastructure oversight, and together that's an incredible synergy. It's an incredible partnership. And I like to say our partners are the best relationship managers a bank could ever hire. So instead of fighting them, we want to enable them, and that's where the paradigm challenging comes in, and looking at this in a different way. Again, non-negotiable on the rules of banking, which have been in place for thousands of years and aren't going to change. But the delivery mechanisms of banking have done nothing but change for thousands of years. And so that's how we think about it. So it's really nothing new. It's just challenging some of the sacred cows, you might say, in banking.
As you've grown the company, have you focused on any let's say geography, sector, or how do you look at the market?
Yeah, so geographic concentration focus has been I think one of those paradigms in banking that has to be challenged. Maybe no one wants to challenge it because banking in your community and the idea and it's a wonderful life. All those things are the type of dynamics that have made community banks great,
Yeah.
and they've made community banks a staple by definition within the community. But that's not where our society and economy are per se. Now we think communities are really important, and having small banks being innovative and driving growth and opportunity within small communities is really important.
Mm.
But the connection of that to that geography is what needs to and is what we break down, and we don't put that as a primal part of our business model. We do have two legacy branches in East Tennessee
Mm.
that we run and are fully dedicated to, and those are really nice markets, and our bankers do a great job over there.
Mm.
But we disconnect that paradigm of geography to
Mm.
focus on the markets,
Mm.
and the markets that we focus on. If you think about, you've got consumer, you've got commercial, small business,
Mm.
you've got horizontal, and you've got vertical. We serve in different ways each of those combinations of consumer, commercial, horizontal, vertical, but we're most interested in, and where I think the growth and the opportunity in the market is definitely on the commercial side.
Mm.
And then, it lends itself that there are more flavors of the verticalized partners. And that's really where our focus and growth in partnerships has come from. And none of that has to do with geography.
I'm a former banker myself as well, and predominantly in the retail side, but also with larger organizations. And working with these larger organizations, I needed to be more creative. Have you found that as well too, or?
Flexibility within those kind of hardened principles we have, the non-negotiables.
Yeah.
We have to be able to decipher. We have to be able to maneuver. We have to be able to, take the attitude that we're here to serve our partners, because ultimately, with them, we're serving the end customer.
Yeah.
And so, we have a lot of different principles and ways we look at things. One of them, I like to say that we leverage the similarities and risk manage the differences. So we want to, we've created a homogeneous data architecture and technology infrastructure and risk management, all these type of things, so that hopefully that's a repeatable, scalable type of infrastructure, so that when we get to the heterogeneity or the differences that the partners present
Yeah.
in terms of that's what we want to celebrate, right?
Yeah.
We want to accentuate their ability to capitalize on their unique place in the market. And we don't want them to all look the same at the branch level. We think of each of them as branches.
Yeah. Hmm.
But in order to be able to do that in a scalable way, it's really contingent upon as much of the infrastructure. And that's different. There are a lot of banks who are in this space who don't take that approach. Some of them have done that quite well. I think in the long run, it inhibits their ability to scale, anyone's ability to scale effectively,
Mm.
and do so with operating leverage.
You also mentioned, some of the various product types or the financial needs, I guess, and for example, called out payments. How do you think about the suite of services that a bank can provide, and you tend to lead with one more than the other, or is one area particularly, you tend to hear that a lot when you're talking to these to clients?
Yeah, well, I think we are limited. We are a bank, so there are only so many things that and products you can offer: deposits, loans, payments, generally speaking. And then I think and there are different ways that SaaS would come into that also, which would be different than most banks. But to this point, we've really just led with the deposit products from an embedded lending perspective. Embedded banking perspective. That's how, you know, most of the great banks over time had been built on a deposit base first,
Mm.
and then you layer into other products. And so that's really been the approach. We're now in the mode where over this year we'll begin scaling into the embedded lending products,
Mhm.
and then also on some specific things on the differentiated things on the payment side.
Yeah.
But those are all built on that deposit base and the deposit chassis. And so when we think about our partners and think about them as branches, again, we're just doing simple banking. banking 101, branch infrastructure, right? To have a full service branch, you've got to be able to offer all of those products to your customers. And so that's really what we look to do. We call it multi-threaded. We want to have our partners to have multiple threads. It's hard though. It's not, this isn't something you snap your fingers over, and it's all built upon relationships and our ability to deliver for partners, and listen to them, and bend and flex with them, and really suit their needs. Because ultimately, if we're suiting their needs, by definition, we're suiting the needs of the end depositor or end borrower.
And I actually I'm wearing this sweatshirt because which I got from Cornell reunion because I saw that you were also a Cornell
Yeah.
graduate, and when yeah, actually when we both left, we were both engineering and technology focused, and now being more business focused. What helps you filter out like what's going to be impactful from a technology perspective in the near term versus something that, is probably gonna take a little bit of time.
Thankfully, I'm surrounded by a lot of really smart people who know who know more about technology than me. Uh, and I think that's what it is, that we've got, what we provide, what we offer, what we have, the assets that we have are really valuable. Bank charter, right? The ability and willingness and plan to embed banking products and services into technology.
Yeah.
So we get looks at many, many, many different things
Mm,
in our DNA,
mm,
in our investor base, embedded in our board of directors. We have multiple fintech venture capital
yeah,
professionals, and not just venture capitalists who have been investors their whole lives. They're actually, all of them have been operators for the majority of their careers, and then in recent years have turned into venture capital folks.
yeah,
So we have a really unique environment, a really unique ecosystem where we have a strong finger on the pulse of what's happening in the market.
yeah,
And we've been fortunate. We've had great partners, and so we've been able to establish ourselves, specifically in the embedded banking market.
yeah,
And once you have that position, you tend to have a lot of friends and a lot of people who are willing to talk to you. And we try to listen. We try to take good notes. And I spend most of my time and with my senior team, you know, really honing our strategy, and then how do we, take various technologies and relationships and bring them together to leverage, so we provide that best experience for our partners that we can,
yeah,
uh, and really predicated upon that homogeneity and with a mind towards scale. So I'm
uh,
not someone who's gonna be great at going and evaluating code
yeah.
and UXs per se, but we've got a lot of good folks on the team who have different parts of those skill sets.
You mentioned sort of the network, and one of the best ways to build out that network is like at an event like Fintech Meetup. Have you attended Fintech Meetup, and what was your experience like?
I think this is 3 years now, 3 or 4 years perhaps,
Mm,
where we've attended, and it's always been a great, you know, open collaborative place where we always think of these things as extremely efficient.
you know,
First year or 2 that we attended, nobody knew us, we didn't know anybody, and, we're kinda walking around with our eyes pretty wide thinking, "What is this?"
yeah,
And candidly, my first takeaway, from, whether it's FinTech Meetup or other large events, is, wow, there is a lot of capital pointed straight at community banks,
mm,
like, as a weapon.
mm,
And so, uh, one, I'm thankful that we're, you know, have been our eyes have been open to see that and understand that, and to take part and benefit in that. But I really am worried about the thousands of banks who either have no idea, or have no idea that it exists, or of how to manage it.
yeah,
So that's kind of the first thing that it did for me,
yeah,
was very confirmatory, and uh, open up, kind of mental horizons more than maybe I had realized they needed to be.
yeah,
And then through that, we've just grown, relationships and our business in the market, that when we go now, like I said, it's a very efficient, see many familiar faces. And so that also makes it easier to meet new people and to find new opportunities, or new companies, new products that we maybe wouldn't have had access to in the normal day-to-day course, but we're able to, either find it ourselves or we get introduced by many of those friends. So uh, it's become a very familiar, friendly type place to go.
What advice would you have for, let's say, a fellow a banker who is thinking about attending FinTech Meetup? Any words of advice?
Yeah, well, I think they should just go, even if they don't believe that they have any real place with fintech or would even know uh, how to start, or it might seem daunting or out of reach or out of touch. I think there's nothing there's no instinct in the human set of instincts quite like survival. And so that that's maybe the first thing that they would figure out if they showed up, is that maybe they uh, need to figure out what's going on and why there are so many people here and why there's so much capital and why it's growing so much every year.
Looking at your background, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about being an F-16 fighter pilot, a trainer, and like any analogies between like running a bank and flying a fighter jet.
Well, it's funny. Pe- People on my team right now are rolling their eyes and going, "I can't believe he just asked that question of Chris," because they're the analogies. I probably have a book of analogies that I use, and many. So I have a saying. There's a book. Maybe you've heard of it. That everything I needed to know in life I learned in kindergarten.
Yeah.
I say, and the Air Force. So that maybe Cornell too a little bit, but really in the Air Force, because it's just so applicable,
Mm.
right? There's no room for posturing. There's no room for fabrication. There's no room for lack of transparency. Everything literally is life or death every day.
Mm.
And nothing can happen on your own. Even in an F-16 is a single seat, single engine airplane, but we're completely meaningless without our wingmen,
Mm.
without the air traffic controllers, without the intelligence folks, without absolutely the maintenance, our maintenance guys. And so it's kind of an across the board life lesson in how to be successful on a team,
Mm.
as an individual, and how to work toward common goals and really uncertain problem sets that you are not going to have the full answer to.
Yeah.
And therefore, the only way you can approach it is with maximum preparation, discipline, and a very flexible mindset, that you're going to change. You can change immediately as conditions change, and risk management. So it's across the board. I have all kinds of all kinds of sayings, that's, and you said analogies, and I apply it. Yeah, a lot of folks, my kids can probably recite these things. One of them, if you want, is aviate, navigate, communicate, always in that order.
Mm.
And what that means is unfortunately, many pilots have died or gotten really hurt, and the people who are with them, because they'd completely misprioritized. They were focused on the wrong things. They were down in the weeds when their head should have been out,
Mm.
and figure out where they were going. Instead, they were focused on making a beautiful radio call
Mm.
as they're crashing into the ground.
Wow.
So aviate, fly your airplane first.
Mm.
Don't crash.
Mm.
Navigate. Hopefully you'll get to the right spot where you
Mm.
intended to go,
Mm.
and then communicate. Hopefully you flew your airplane to the right spot and you told everybody and you got there legally, and you're not going to get yourself in trouble because you landed at the wrong spot without telling anybody, or the right spot without telling anybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there are a lot of life and business lessons,
Mm.
particularly as it relates to banking.
Mm.
In that, another one is near rocks, far rocks,
Mm.
check six. So that's a cross check that fighter pilots do when they're flying low level. So you're flying, and there's a lot of this stuff going on today,
Mm.
active,
Mm.
with brethren, far overseas and in danger, and of whom I could not be more proud. But it,
Mm.
it is an unbelievable thing to watch our guys and girls just execute a plan.
Mm.
People can agree or disagree with the plan. That's not, what I'm talking about. It's their ability to execute in. So reflects great credit upon I think them on the country, on everybody else, but all these things is what they're thinking about and what business people should be, gearing toward this near rocks, far rocks concept. You're flying low level, 500 feet above the ground, 500 knots. A lot of things can happen bad quickly.
Mm,
And so you look at the near rocks, what could I hit in the next 15 seconds?
mm,
Make sure I don't hit those rocks on the ground.
mm,
And then far rocks, are there mountains in the distance? Are there, things I need to be planning to navigate around out? And then when I've done that, then I'm going to look behind me,
mm,
check six to see if there's anybody coming back there.
yeah.
And then I'm going to look at my wingman, and then I'm going to start it all over again.
That
And that's how you break down and you do flying things, is a bunch of small tasks done the same way and done repeatedly into good habit patterns, and then you instinctively manage your risk. And so it's really no different than every day running a company to me.
Thank you for those analogies and great words of advice, Chris. To close out, is there anything in ahead in the world of fintech that gets you particularly excited?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. There's a lot. Some creates anxiety, others creates excitement. But I think what we're seeing a lot of is a lot of validation of the model. I think the first few years we were doing this, there were a lot of question marks in the market, regulatory wise, and from others, and from fintechs even. And yeah, I think the events over the last couple of years have really solidified the nature of what the bank is in this ecosystem, in these structures, what the role of the bank charter is, and how I say it's primal. It's actually the common denominator between every activity that goes on in banking is the bank charter.
Hmm.
And so I think the most exciting part is there's such really strong leadership on the regulatory front, and we've been privileged to really get to know at the senior levels, and then down through the ranks, and have seen firsthand how this is really happening, and kind of the acceptance and the understanding that community banks really have to innovate and have to really focus on how do they become more efficient, more scalable, and competitive with other offerings out in the market. So I think that's a pretty awesome thing. It's a pretty big change. It's been, you know, kind of won through blood, sweat, and tears in a lot of ways. A lot of ways that we all know of, and other ways that maybe aren't so obvious. And that's been a pretty awesome awesome thing to see, and has me very optimistic about our future in particular, but many others. And I think the door is wide open if people want to come in and do it the right way,
Hmm.
and lean in. And I think the regulator, which is always a necessary precondition, is for the regulators to understand and be on board. And I really do think that they're there. And the motivations are really well founded. So that's a pretty exciting setup for everyone.
Well, that sounds great, Chris. And once again, thank you for joining us again at FinTech Talks, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity.